just serves a productive Tuesday. Now here's a sneak peek of our edition. Rwanda and the Gambia say they have solid reasons to strengthen cooperation in the field of justice. Finance and industry experts say African countries have the responsibility to boost their economies by leveraging the continent's abundant natural resources. On the international scale, after years of international isolation, Syria's vibrant but struggling art scene is hoping for a renaissance as sanctions that once silenced its creative voices may soon begin to lift. We are glad to have your company tonight, coming to you straight from the heart of Africa, Kigali, and I bringing you tonight's edition is Martina Abera. Let us start off by informing you that on Tuesday, President Paul Kagame received various guests at his office in Village Urugwiro. Among those welcomed by the head of state was Hassan Boubacar Jallow, Chief Justice of the Gambia, along with his delegation, who are in Rwanda for an official working visit. During their discussions, they focused on ways to further strengthen judicial cooperation between the two countries, with an emphasis on experience sharing and improving the efficiency of their respective justice systems. Hassan Boubacar Jallow previously served as chief prosecutor of the International Criminal Tribunal for Rwanda in Arusha, Tanzania, from 2003 to 2016. He also held the position of Chief Prosecutor of the International Residual Mechanism for Criminal Tribunals, the UN body that succeeded the ICTR and ICTY from 2012 until 2016, when he was succeeded by Serge Prametz. Also on Tuesday, President Paul Kagame received Ambassador Valentine Rugwabiza, the Special Representative of the United Nations Secretary General and head of the UN Peacekeeping Mission in the Central African Republic, MINUSCA. She was accompanied by Lieutenant General Humphrey Nyoni, the force commander of MINUSCA. Their discussions with President Paul Kagame focused on regional security, and they expressed appreciation for Rwanda's continued contribution to peacekeeping and security efforts in the Central African Republic. President Kagame also received Professor Ibrahim Gambari, who is in Rwanda to attend an international conference on security in Africa. During the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi, Professor Gambari, then Nigeria's representative on the United Nations Security Council, urged the council to take action in response to the atrocities occurring in Rwanda, recognizing it as genocide. On the 7th of April 2021, during the launch of the 27th commemoration of the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi, President Kagame praised Professor Gambari and the nation of Nigeria, stating that Rwanda would never forget their contribution in efforts to end the genocide. Rwanda and the Gambia say they have solid reasons to strengthen cooperation in the field of justice. This was announced by the Chief Justice of both countries during a press conference in Kigali, where they affirmed that drawing from each country's culture and values can significantly contribute to the advancement of the justice sector. We have more.
In a press briefing held after a candid discussion with Rwanda's justice sector officials, the Chief Justice of the Republic of Gambia, Hassan Boubacar Jallow, commended Rwanda's efforts in rebuilding the country following the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi.
When I finished my assignment with the UN system and I went back, I haven't been here in 9 years, and since I arrived, I've observed a tremendous transformation in the country here, tremendous positive change in the country. I think for all of us today, Rwanda serves as a model of development, as a model of a country which has arisen from the ashes of a genocide and moving forward in unity, in progress, with a visionary leadership.
He noted that if Rwanda and the Gambia, two countries that share cultural similarities, join efforts, they can accomplish a great deal for the benefit of their citizens.
We have common values, common challenges, common aspirations, I find that in our own strategic plan, judiciary 5-year strategic plan, many of the areas on which we put emphasis are already also your preoccupations. And in some of them, you have stepped ahead of us and ahead of many other jurisdictions. So this has been a mission of learning and also then developing a framework and a plan for cooperation between the judiciary of the Gambia and the judiciary of Rwanda.
On the other hand, the Chief Justice of Rwanda, Honorable Domitille Mukantaganzwa, highlighted that Rwanda has continued to develop homegrown solutions which are yielding tangible results in building a justice system that is responsive to the needs of Rwandans.
Twishatsemo ibisubizo bifasha
We have developed an approach focused on seeking homegrown solutions that help Rwanda and Rwandans overcome genocide crimes. One notable example is the Gacaca courts, which played a critical role by handling over 2 million cases. Continuing in the spirit of finding our own solutions, we now have mediation committees at the sector level. These committees offer an initial hearing and also provide an appeal mechanism. This is a tangible result of our commitment to homegrown approaches. However, we should not simply sit back and rejoice. We have not yet achieved everything we aim for. We continue to do our best to improve the solutions we already have, while also striving to find even better ones for the future. This is the second day of a 4-day official visit to Rwanda by Hassan Boubacar Jallow, former chief prosecutor at the International Criminal Tribunal for Rwanda. His visit, which began yesterday, aims to promote the exchange of experiences and enhance cooperation between the justice sectors of Rwanda and the Gambia, and with the shared goal of delivering more effective and people-centered justice in both countries.
Rwanda's High Commissioner to Tanzania, General Patrick Nyamvumba, stated that the United Nations peacekeeping missions are headed nowhere if they do not address the root causes of conflicts. He emphasized this in the time for that this is a time for Africans to begin seeking solutions to their own security challenges. He made these remarks at the International Security Conference on Africa, currently taking place in Rwanda. And our Gladys has more.
MONUSCO as it is since 2010. Before it was MONUC.
General Patrick Nyamvumba was one of the key participants in a panel discussion about the future of UN peacekeeping missions on the African continent. He reiterated that a time has come for Africa to leverage its own capacity in addressing security issues. Using examples, he pointed out that UN peacekeeping operations have yet to provide lasting solutions.
MONUSCO as it is since 2010. Before it was MONUC. Now, MONUSCO from 2010 to date has had an expenditure of $17.4 billion. Before it, MONUC had spent $8 billion. So cumulatively, money spent on MONUC and MONUSCO is $25 billion. And what do we have for it? You have more armed groups in DRC, in Eastern DRC, from maybe 120 when MONUC was there to more than 230 now. You have really nothing to show for that type of expenditure. So if you talk about $25 billion and you look at the state of Eastern DRC today, now that brings me to where do we want peacekeeping to go? And back to your question, where are we? Yeah. That's where we are. We are nowhere, basically.
General Nyamvumba mentioned Rwanda's success in restoring peace in Mozambique's Cabo Delgado province, citing it as an example of what is possible when African countries take ownership of their security challenges.
But I think in terms of models, if we want to succeed, there are certain things that are working. And what I have in mind is the example of my country, Rwanda, and what is going on in Mozambique. This is a bilateral arrangement, but they've been able to reverse the trends. And so there is relative stability, the people have returned to their homes. So there is what we see that works. So how do we build on that? So bilateral arrangements in themselves might not be there's something we can build on for them to have legitimacy, to have scale. So that is now where the continental body comes in, like the AU, to support these arrangements.
Professor Philip Kasija Apuli, a political science and public administration lecturer at Makerere University in Uganda, also emphasized that Africa would benefit greatly by using its own experiences to address conflicts, terrorism, and other security threats across the continent.
So increasingly what I have seen and what I think will happen in the future is we need to work the peacekeeping missions out of a job. Why? Because we have other alternatives. Prevention. We do mediation. You prevent. Because the fraction, the amount of money that you spend on peacekeeping and the amount of money that you spend on prevention is very small on prevention. So we need to prevent. But for you to prevent, you need to do early warning. In order for you to do early warning, you need also to do early response.
Les missions des Nations Unies sont devenues un machin.
The chairperson of the African Commission, Musa Faki Mahamat, pointed out that since peacekeeping missions began on the African continent, none have sustainably resolved security issues. He emphasized that Africa has the capacity to use its own experience and knowledge to solve security challenges and address tensions between countries on the continent. Rwanda is hosting this conference while being one of the African countries with a significant contribution to peacekeeping efforts across the continent through UN peace missions, African Union operations, and bilateral cooperation agreements with other nations.
Thank you, Enora Gladys, for that report. Now, finance and industry experts say African countries have the responsibility to boost their economies by leveraging the continent's abundant natural resources. Adam Squizera with more.
During a panel session on the second day of the International Security Conference on Africa, which focused on critical raw materials and supply chain warfare, Africa's Raw, Donald Kaberuka, the chairman and managing partner of Southbridge Group, emphasized that real transformation in Africa is only possible when African countries are willing to shoulder the cost of long-term strategic investments in essential infrastructure investments that enable the continent to harness its vast wealth.
No country has transformed without having a number of key strategic investments. They are costly at the beginning, but they are huge multipliers along the way. So capital is there. We simply need to make sure there are policies, there are institutions, there is stability, and of the strategic investments which attract these forms of capital. But I don't have time to develop. You said 60 seconds, right? So in 60 seconds, I can only say that capital is available. However, we have to make a home for it.
Kingsley Chiedu Mogalu, inaugural president of the Africa School of Governance, noted that Africa possesses the inherent power to develop itself if public resources are effectively managed and strategically deployed.
Many African countries can create and generate capital within their economies if they organize their public financial management effectively. Taxation systems, not to tax people too highly, but to make sure that everybody contributes at least a little. Two, when we talk about critical raw materials, the reason African countries have all these raw materials but they have remained poor, and some other countries have it and have created wealth, is because of the absence of the social contract in many African countries. If we were to use these critical raw materials and the incomes from them to create public goods, many people in African countries will be very willing to pay their taxes, and so we'll be able to generate capital for industrialization.
This session also highlighted the role of governments in fully understanding the type of investment needed and the appropriate frameworks through which to implement them.
If there is an a plant exporting LNG to Europe, for example, and it drained the whole gas available from the domestic market, is this an investment good? So, and maybe the quick win is to bring up African projects to the market, and then the investors will come.
Other sessions on this final day of the conference addressed how African nations are responding to cyber attacks and the various strategies they have adopted to bolster their digital security.
Thank you, Adams, for that report. Now, Rwanda is set to begin investing in gold reserves that will serve as part of the country's foreign exchange reserves, similar to how the US dollar has traditionally been used. The Central Bank of Rwanda, BNR, explains that this decision aims to help the country build a more resilient economy. We have more.
The Central Bank of Rwanda states that it is implementing strong measures aimed at building long-term economic resilience in the country. Among these measures is a new project to invest in gold, which will be used as a part of the country's reserves, as explained by the Governor of the National Bank of Rwanda, Soraya Hakuziyaremye. We at the Central Bank of Rwanda, we have made the decision to invest in a certain amount of money in gold. However, we will continue to assess the associated risks and conduct thorough analysis, just as we have consistently done with bonds. This investment is an addition to the other assets we already hold, and we believe it will be managed successfully, just as our other investments have continued to yield positive returns. Economic analysts say that Rwanda's move to start holding gold reserves is a positive step, as many countries around the world have taken this approach to safeguard against the impacts of volatile global political and trade dynamics. There are many reasons why people are concerned about the direction of the global economy, especially due to the ongoing trade wars between major economies and the imposition of tariffs on various products. This has led growing uncertainty about the stability of the US dollar, which is currently the most widely used reserve currency in central banks. As a result, there is a shift in thinking. Some now believe that instead of relying solely on the US dollar for reserves, it would be wiser to diversify and include gold. Rwanda is among the countries that have taken this step, but it is not alone. Several other nations are also moving in the same direction. However, the economists also point out that it would not be advisable for 100% of the country's reserves to be held in gold alone. If we were to convert all our reserves into gold, it wouldn't be a wise decision. However, allocating a certain amount of gold as part of our reserves would be a positive step. We could establish a program that allows us to purchase a specific amount each year rather than doing it all at once. Making the shift gradually would help avoid potential negative impacts that could arise from a sudden large-scale purchase. The Central Bank of Rwanda states that it currently holds sufficient US dollar reserves to enable the country to import all necessary goods and services for a period of 4.7 months. The introduction of gold reserves is intended to complement the current practice of holding US dollar reserves. As of now, the exact value or amount of the planned gold investment has not been disclosed. Olive Nete, RTV News.
Participants in the International Conference of Women Parliamentarians from African countries that are members of the Commonwealth stated that this 5-day conference will leave them with significant insights in their fight to build non-discriminatory nations. We have more of this report.
Among the speakers at the conference was the Speaker of the Gauteng Provincial Legislature, who reminded her fellow parliamentarians to use their positions to advance their countries by enacting laws that are fair to both women and men living in them.
We gather here under a banner of purpose, a purpose rooted in justice, equality, and dignity for all. The theme of this workshop speaks to the heart of our shared vision. Build a future where no woman or girl is left behind, and where the full potential of half of our population is realized for the benefit for our entire society. The reality we face today is very sobering. While strides have been made, the journey towards full gender equality remains unfinished. Discriminatory laws, structural inequality, violence against women, and limited economic inclusion continue to hamper progress. But let me be clear, ladies and gentlemen who are here with us, we are not here to merely diagnose the problem. We are here as legislators, as change makers, and as leaders committed to crafting and enforcing the very policies and mechanisms that can transform our societies, and they should transform our societies.
The Speaker of the Chamber of Deputies of Rwanda's Parliament, Honorable Kazarwa Gertrude, urged attendees to support their governments in fighting against genocide ideology, especially in regions such as the eastern part of the DRC.
We receive you at the period that Rwanda is observing since April 17th, 100 days of remembrance to mark the 31st commemoration of genocide against the Tutsi in 1994. This commemoration takes place in a challenging context amid ongoing anti-Tutsi hate speech and violence in Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo. For 31 years, the international community, which once failed Rwanda, has remained largely silent about the plight of Congolese refugees driven out from their homes by FDLR since July 1994. In the words of CWP anthem, women cannot be silent when all around the world people are hurt and hungry children are crying. We will sing out for justice and development and hold the rights to all people high.
Meanwhile, the chairperson of the Commonwealth Women Parliamentarians Africa Region, Honorable Madina Ndangiza, noted that holding the conference in Rwanda will help participants learn valuable lessons from the country that can enhance women's involvement in governance across African nations.
In Rwanda, we are proudly and very grateful that Rwanda has got a big number of women in the Chamber of Deputies and even in the Senate. We can say that having a big number of women in the Parliament, we work closely with our counterparts, with our men counterparts, to ensure that the laws that we enact are gender sensitive.
From 2023 to 2026, Rwanda is chairing the Forum of Women Parliamentarians from African Commonwealth countries.
A new cassava farming method based on proper planting measurements has significantly increased yields by more than 70 times. Previously, a farmer could barely harvest 1 ton per hectare, but now they can harvest over 70 tons per hectare. Cassava farmers organized under the Ingabo Syndicate through the Gwiza Muhinzi project were introduced to modern professional farming practices aimed at boosting cassava productivity. Some farmers trained in the multiplication of improved cassava seeds say the training helped significantly, inspiring many others to re-engage in cassava farming. Ngumye Mbarebe Tassien, the coordinator of the Gwiza Muhinzi project under the Ingabo Syndicate, explained the importance of using improved seeds and the understanding of soil conditions. The Ingabo Syndicate supports a large number of farmers across Rwanda, particularly cassava growers. Currently, the syndicate has over 16,051 members, with women representing 55.1%, men 44.9%, and young farmers under 35 years old making up 20% of the total membership. During a memorial event in honoring children, women, pastors, as well as their families who were killed in the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi, participants condemned certain pastors from the Seventh-day Adventist Church who played a role in the atrocities. Jean Bosco Muhaimana, a genocide survivor from Gitwe in Ruhango district, pointed out the house where they hid for a certain period. He recounted that on May 20th, 1994, some Adventist pastors collaborated collaborated with the Interahamwe militia in killing Tutsi who had sought refuge at the Adventist Church headquarters. On the same date in 1994, Grace Mukarugwigema, one of the few survivors of a massacre that claimed the lives of over 500 women and children, remembered how they had taken refuge at a place called Duane in a home of a Jerdam who had falsely promised them safety. This memorial event paid tribute to women, children, pastors and their families, as well as other staff members of the Adventist Church who were killed. During the ceremony, several pastors of the church were denounced for their involvement in the killings. Senator Dr. Penine Wimbazi urged parents to avoid distorting history and instead teach their children the truth about the genocide. At the site known as Duane in Bweramana sector, where women and children were murdered, the names of those killed have now been displayed. Near the Jitwe Center, a memorial was also established bearing the names of more than 81 pastors and their families who were killed, and it serves as their final resting place. Business people in Muhanga district commemorate for the 31st time fellow entrepreneurs who were killed during the 94 genocide against the Tutsi, while also extending support to four families of genocide survivors by donating cows. The commemoration event took place at the Kabgai Genocide Memorial, where business people from Muhanga district gathered to remember their colleagues who were killed during the genocide against the Tutsi. Prior to the main event, the Private Sector Federation in Muhanga offered support to genocide survivors. Jean-Paul Twahirwa, the Vice President of the Private Sector Federation in Muhanga District, stated that the business people who were killed during the genocide against the Tutsi were hard-working individuals who aimed to contribute to the development of the country. He emphasized that they will continue to honor their memory by following in their footsteps and standing by vulnerable survivors. During the commemoration, speakers urged business people to unite and use their collective strength to build the country. At the same time, they condemned those among the business community who played a role in the genocide against the Tutsi.
wa sosiyete turakwibutsa ko buri sosiyete isabwa n'itegeko kubika ibitabo bya sosiyete ndetse no gushyikiriza RDB amakuru abikubiyemo. Ibyo bitabo birimo igitabo cy'abanyamigabane, icy'abagenewe inyungu ku migabane, inyandiko y'amakuru ya sosiyete, ibaruramari ngarukamwaka n'izindi. Gutanga amakuru y'ugenewe inyungu ku migabane wanyura kuri bo.rdb.rw, naho gutanga izindi nyandiko ukanyura kuri org.rdb.rw.
Nyiri muto arababwiraga data bati ntabwo wagira umukamo mwinshi utunze inka imwe, ariko nigeze acika intege. Mama akinjira mu bucuruzi harabamubwiraga bati ntabwo watera imbere udakorera mu iduka rigezweho, ariko ntibyamusubije inyuma, yakoranaga umwete. Njya muri kaminuza harabanshidikanyagaho bavuga ko nashobora kaminuza naturuka mu muryango wifashije, ariko byarangiye nanditse amateka mashya. Igihe cyo gutera ishema umuryango wanjye kigeze, bamwe bakomeje kumbwira bati ntabwo watera umuryango wawe ibyishimo n'ishema, ariko narabishoboye. Hari abakekaga ko nasigira umurage ukomeye abankomokaho, ariko ubu mfite uruganda rutunganya amata. Banki ya Kigali yabaye umufatanyabikorwa wanjye mu rugendo rwose, inzozi zanjye zibimamo. Bigereho.
Welcome back to other stories making headlines on the international scene. Now, after years of international isolation, Syria's vibrant but struggling art scene is hoping for a renaissance as sanctions that once silenced its creative voices may soon begin to lift. Al Jazeera with the details.
Zawaya Art Gallery is one of the main centers for art in Syria. It's hidden away in a building above a law firm. It's fitting, considering that Syrian art has been hidden away from the world because of sanctions. Ruba Suleiman hopes that that isolation is about to end. It's been a hard struggle for the gallery.
We as galleries weren't able to participate in events outside the country, and artists couldn't leave the country or meet and learn from the experiences of other artists, creating some sort of artistic isolation. In terms of buying and selling artworks, we had major complications. One of our customers, who's from Switzerland, bought an art piece and wired the money to Lebanon. The Lebanese bank looked at our gallery up and blocked our account due to the fact that we were based in Damascus.
And despite those challenges, Syrian art struggled on, with the artists documenting their own experiences. Some of the paintings in the gallery show a short history of Syria's recent past. Pre-war Syria, Syria at war, and the graffiti that sprung up after the Assad regime fell. For struggling artists, the news of sanctions relief is welcome. Ghazan Akil is an accomplished painter with gallery representation. Despite that, he's had to struggle just to be able to create. He's had to make his own paints. Quality paints are rarely available in the marketplace.
I used to get powders that aren't specific for artworks, ones that were used for clothes dyeing or floor tiles. Then put them on a stovetop for a specific time, add sugar to make them stick, add a number of chemicals until I get the color that I wanted. All of this was because I couldn't find the colors that I needed or supplies that I wanted.
The domestic market for art is tiny because of the sanctions. People are more concerned with getting food on the table rather than art on the walls. But Syria has a rich artistic history. Damascus used to be a major center for art for centuries, from Roman times to modern street art like this.
And that Al Jazeera story marks the end of our bulletin. And on behalf of the news production team as well as the technical team, thank you for sticking with us on RTV News. My name is Martina Abera, and up until next time, stay safe and have a good night.